He won over Eric by that. And you're Bruce the Blog.
And he's Bazzo, and you're watching Bruce the Blog Goes Bazzo.
Good evening. It's round 4, Bruce versus Bazzo.
Welcome to another episode of Bruce the Blog Goes Bazzo, and as my esteemed co-host Bazzo just sort of broadly hinted at the opening of the show, this is one of our guestless shows. What do you call it? Round 4?
Round 4,
right,
yes.
Right. Where we just go at it on any number of sundry topics. We may agree, we may not agree, and it's up to you to decide, who you agree with. Anyhow, as always, we're brought to you very proudly and gratefully by the Penny Saver, Chase Media Group, and we thank Caller Chase and Frank Rich for allowing us to be here with you.
Yes, we do thank you. Thank you. Just so you know, because you always remind the audience that you can find the best of Bruce the Blog Goes Bazzo on YouTube, thanks to Denise Williams.
Right.
The most popular, Denise Wilson,
That's
you're
okay.
right. I've done that before.
Right.
The most popular shows
Yes.
that have been viewed
well, the ones where
are our shows.
Right.
And I've always
we don't want to make too much of that, otherwise we won't have any guests anymore.
No, the guests certain guests are just command, like the Darren shows always command an audience.
Right.
Greg Ball commands an audience because they just the way they are.
Right. Supervisor Puglisi was very good.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in having guests of that caliber.
But being that we came from the print before we did TV with our columns and all this, we had our own audience, and I've always said people were more curious about what we thought, because they already knew what the candidate.
I see what you're saying.
They already knew what the guests thought. They were everywhere in the world in the press.
Yes, right.
And
or they're elected officials whose stands are obviously well known from their campaigning and public posture.
And the viewership on the YouTube just confirms my hypothesis.
Right.
So I think they're just like you. I think
oh, really? Well, I guess you don't read some of the blogs then, if you think that. So anyhow,
which is now our segue into the first two topics.
If those people like me, I hate to find the people who hate me. Boy, I'm lucky to be alive in that case. In any sense, speaking of guests, we recently had on the show Mr. Tom DiChiaro, who is the owner operator of the winery at St. George in Mohegan Lake, and I always like to mention his brother John, who works with him and does a great job in a lot of areas, programming music and lighting and the winery, of course, this past week, you might say made local history, right? That it received from the town of Yorktown a temporary certificate of occupancy, figuratively known as CO. So if you hear the word CO, it's certificate of occupancy.
After a 6-year battle, you can see his commentary on it if you go to ncnlocal.com.
Right.
Bruce the Blog.
Right. Yorktown uncorks the winery, and it has been a well-documented 6-year battle for the brothers DiChiaro, as I refer to them, at the winery at St. George. And so what we were going to chat about a little bit, Bazzo, is the fact that he's been through, as I mentioned in the blog, current supervisor Michael Grace, who's been in office all of about 6 weeks, is the 4th supervisor that the winery has encountered, you might say, right?
You might want to go, because if we just deal with the Old Stone Church as a building.
Right.
It's
100 years old this year.
Right, that's what the natives call it, the Old Stone Church.
Right.
Anyway.
And by the way, I want to just quickly interject because it's a good segue. One of the issues, as we get into this particular topic, this segment of the show, one of the issues that Mr. DiChiaro encountered with the town of Yorktown and some of its employees who are responsible for going to buildings and looking at whether buildings meet certain codes, ordinances, etc., was he was told at one point, you have to install a sprinkler system. Now, Tom is nothing if not very thorough and detailed and does a lot of research. He's actually an adjunct professor at Catholic University. And he looked into it and he's saying, no, I don't need a sprinkler because it's an old stone church.
Right.
Now, we want to make it clear that the people who were telling him that were very concerned for everybody's safety. So, we're not criticizing them at all in that respect. But it was their misinterpretation of ordinances, and he said, that doesn't make sense to me. Ultimately, it was determined, no, that kind of a structure does not need a sprinkler system. The point being, there was sort of a series over the years of obstacles that he felt were put in his way, sometimes because of personal animus, right? Not because of ordinances.
Yeah, but I think they used the ordinances out of personal animus.
Right.
Well,
right, but the point is, and this is something that Michael Grace has addressed as supervisor, the idea is for a town like Yorktown or any other municipality is to work with its businesses and its entrepreneurs to help enrich the local economy, not to find obstacles or go out of their way to put obstacles in the way.
I read a quote online recently within the last 6 weeks that struck me. Governments create bureaucracies to thwart business success.
No, and I can tell you, Supervisor Grace, who I do work with, and I host a show with him every week, he's a firm believer in that. And I think that's why he was elected, and I think that's why he is actually seeing a lot of growing support from the public because he's sensible. He looks at things objectively. He tries to make the right decision based on what makes sense, not based on what he personally believes in every case. It's what makes sense for the greater good.
This is true, and when it came to the winery and even the restaurant before this, what I want to say, if you go back to when it was trying to be a restaurant with Mr. Palmetto, who's since deceased, we're going back 10 years this fight.
Right, and we should say, the late, may rest in peace, Mike Palmetto, who owned the winery, who owned the Old Stone Church, right, and sold it to Tom DiChiaro. He had tried to, get the building
as a restaurant,
right, and the town,
the town from day one.
And by the way, I should mention Bazzo is sort of the local historian on this subject because he's been covering it consistently since the beginning, right?
From when Palmetto tried to open the restaurant, and from day one, the town thwarted him and Tom because they had their own designs for that building. They wanted to make it either a tourist center, which I don't understand, the tourist attractions,
I remember that, right.
Or an annex to the museum. And I always said...
An annex to the museum, which is in Yorktown Heights.
Yes, make an annex in that side of town for the museum.
That would be quite a remote annex.
Both their thoughts would have taken it off the tax rolls and would have been a burden on the taxpayers because you would have had town employees manning them on the taxpayer dime.
And then... I know when Supervisor Linda Cooper, who I was a big supporter of, and I worked with Supervisor Cooper when the Harrison A. Parfield the Dreams Foundation was created, and we became involved with the town when she started what actually, with Joan Valenstein, was the predecessor to the Alliance for Safe Kids, and she asked our foundation to park money because municipalities cannot do fundraising. In any case, but when Supervisor Cooper was in office, the Landmarks Commission wanted to designate that building, and the town board voted against it, and as a result, the Landmarks Commission resigned en masse.
That was one of the few board meetings I've ever attended because they're really boring, and I had much more fun sticking pins in my eyes than sitting through a town board meeting. And that's with any town, not just Yorktown. Most of these things are boring. You really have to be into wonkishness to sit through those things. But anyway, I did a whole thing on this landmarking. I've never believed a property should be landmarked without the consent of the owner.
Right, and that's Tom DiChiaro's point. He was telling me the other day, by the way, Bazzo, that there is a real clear distinction between a national landmark, historic landmark, which the building and the building owner actually can benefit from in various ways, but what the Yorktown, the local landmarks commission, wanted to do would be punitive to the owner, like telling you can't do this, you can't do that.
Most local landmarking are punitive. And let me tell you, we were talking off the air about Susan Siegel, and that she wasn't always wrong.
Of course
There were
not.
some, and the fact that she did not appoint people to the Landmarks Commission again, and her comment, which was printed on, in one of the publications, that the people that were applying for it had self-serving motives.
Well, I think that's a very good point, because in many cases that is true, right?
And I thought, she got it.
Yeah, yeah.
If you were going to have because these people would have said, well, I want that, and the owner would have had nothing to say about it, and that is so wrong.
Right.
And if Michael Grace is really thinking about reinstituting the landmarks, which I think is a bad idea. I really do think it's a bad idea, because locally people want to tell you what to do with your property even though they have no investment in it.
Right.
They want to tell you what to, but if you tell them what to do with their property, that's my property.
Here's the issue. Here's one of the issues. It's a form of eminent domain, but it's being administered not by elected officials. It's being administered by volunteers who, as you're saying, what are your qualifications for telling me?
It's an end run around eminent domain.
Right.
The takings clause. Because they're taking your property and telling you and not giving you any value for it. In fact, then they're actually going to diminish the value because you can't get full value out of the property.
Right.
It's not easy to sell a landmark building.
Well, it's a little bit analogous, not to get off track into a whole other subject, but there's a certain relevance here. It's a little bit analogous. Listen, I think it's great if people live on a multi-acre lot, right, and they have a nice bucolic spread, and they have a lot of trees. That doesn't mean they should be telling other people, you can't cut down your trees.
It's on point. That's quite on point.
Right?
You
can't cut. No, I'm glad you live where you live, and that's fine. Don't cut down your trees. Don't tell me as a property owner I can't cut down my trees, right?
One of the things that always annoys me in many respects is when people think your business is their business, and that they should make their business your business.
Right, right.
We just...
Well, and by the way, I'm not on the town board. I'm certainly not an elected official in any sense, but there is a certain undercurrent that the tree ordinance may be uprooted.
It's more than just a tree ordinance.
Talking about, by the way, I'm talking about the tree ordinance in Yorktown.
Right.
We go to a lot of different towns. Sorry, folks.
But it's more than it's that mentality out there that they just. I was reading an editorial here in yesterday's Post. Business-friendly, New York, Cuomo changing the tone. But they haven't changed the tone. A pizzeria was fined over $5,000 because the Department of Labor said that they didn't give their employees enough T-shirts. Why is New York dictating to business how many shirts they can have?
Are you serious?
Right here. Brought the editorial here.
Really?
I didn't know this.
It makes no
sense
whatsoever.
New York State can tell certain businesses what kind of uniforms to give their people, how many uniforms to give their people, and if you don't step up to their expectations, it's a very punitive fine, $5,000 because of a T-shirt for a pizzeria.
Did employees complain?
I don't know the whole story. I was just reading to me it was why are we making everybody's problem ours?
No, it's not. You're right. And by the way, I guess that pizzeria owner must have been really teed off, huh?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so the winery got its temporary certificate of occupancy. He's going to move forward now. He can operate 7 days a week. But
that was the thing I talked to Tom about last night. I stopped by to congratulate him. The fact that now this was a win-win. He can make money. The town makes money in sales tax.
Right.
The people...
He can create jobs.
Right, and the people have a venue more than the few nights he was allowed to open through the way he had done it month by month.
And he had to pay every month to month, for a special permit that was quite expensive.
This thing by the town that made this happen so long, and I still believe it was through a vendetta. I believe they used all the codes, including trying with the landmarking, punitively to hinder. And all this time the town was open. Remember, he's open. He's making the money, but through a pact. The town's not getting any of the sales tax out of this deal. There was the town lost. The taxpayers lost. The people lost. Now Everybody wins, and I've never understood why people made it personal on something that was so right to begin with.
Right. Yeah. No, I know. One other thing I do want to touch on this show, Bazzo, is, and by the time people are watching the show, in some cases, this will have receded into the background. But there was news made in Yorktown where a member of the supervisor's family,
Right.
had some trouble. And all I want to say about that is, it says volumes about the strength of character of Supervisor Grace, that his decision was to publicly talk about this. It happens to be a son of his, that made news, doing something that was against the law. And Supervisor Grace felt, there's nothing that he has to hide about it. And so on the show, those of you who do live in Yorktown, on your government TV channel, Grace Notes, he talks about it openly. And here's the thing about this. He's not alone, and his wife, Lisa Grace, not alone. There are many parents who understand how challenging it is to bring up children. Adolescents especially, 19, 20, early 20s, a lot of them are trying to find their way in the world and what to do with their lives. And heaven knows these days, because of the world we live in, that's increasingly difficult. And he understands that, and he's dealing with it in a very responsible way. Now, what's irresponsible, and this is where I get quite agitated, is people who go online and post these ignorant comments. They don't know the family, they don't know the situation. Based on some of their comments, they don't seem to know much of anything, and they make malicious comments. And here's the point. You know something? If you aren't a credit to yourself, then maybe you feel you have to discredit somebody else, and that is really sad.
Well, let me tell you something. I'm going to give a couple of shots out on this one.
Yeah.
Number one, the media. I have, in my stable of advisors and my smart people that I go to, I have a person in the media, a reporter that you and I both know that I respect.
Yes.
Her judgment.
Yes. Yes.
And I asked her.
As do I.
And I asked her if you were still in your position, how would you have covered this? And she told me it would have been a police blotter entry. That the fact that he was the supervisor's son.
I know that she, has very strong, responsible views on how to handle that. But a lot of the media did basically treat it that way.
No, the headlines were supervisor's son.
Right.
And the fact is, he was an adult.
Yeah.
Number one, the fact that he was the supervisor's son was not relevant to the crime that he's alleged to have done. It should have just been a police blotter, youth arrest, like they do with just any anonymous person. If people want to say, "Oh, I recognize that last name," then they can go look up and see it. But to headline it, supervisor's son, that to me was malicious journalism. Trying to score points, trying to get, and if you got to score points, a family is in pain. It's like when a child kills himself, and you get these a lot that you would never have covered a private suicides in your tenure. If there was off the Brooklyn Bridge or the Tappan Zee, you can't help it. It's public. But the fact is
that's also because, as you're referring to, the managing editor had very strong views on that I totally supported.
But the family is suffering. The press has no right to kick him in the butt.
Let's who's kidding who? Journalism is a business. End of story.
No, but
30.
You're dealing with people, serving people, but
I'm just saying. But journalism, and that explains why
you're not supposed
to. You know something, Bazzo? That
do
what you're
no
saying,
harm.
I understand what you're saying, but in a certain respect, it pales next to people for whom online comments, especially if they're anonymous, has become like alcohol.
Well, that's
they're like alcohol. They're like alcoholics. When you have too much to drink, it's happened to all of us, including me. All of a sudden, you have this bravado. Bravado, by the way, means false courage. You have this bravado, and you start talking tough, and you slur your words. People who go online, especially, the cowards who don't even post their names and make malicious comments. You know, it's like they're drunk on this false power. Like they're going to slur other people. They're going to try to discredit other people because they have nothing positive to say about themselves.
But that's the second shot. I want to go into the anonymous posters. I read some of those posts. They weren't even on topic.
One of them, the gentleman, totally didn't understand the use of the word usurp. So don't use words you don't understand. He totally didn't understand the word usurp. He misused it. Another person referred to a grand larceny as a scandal. If that's a scandal, then every municipality has 20 scandals a day. Well, it's not a scandal, so don't use words you don't understand.
Well, it would have been a scandal if Michael Grace was doing the grand larceny. That's the scandal.
Well, he wasn't.
No, I said, but then it's a scandal, but not, his kid made a mistake, and the courts will decide if he's guilty or not. So it can only say alleged.
Made a mistake. Apparently, the people who comment never make mistakes.
See, I believe
they're perfect.
I believe young people.
What a joke!
I do believe young people are even make mistakes because you're young and you don't think and you don't see the concept. We all. I don't know of anybody that hasn't done something stupid.
Right.
Sometimes even criminal in their youth, and they may have gotten away with it, so they got lucky, but it was still criminal.
Well, you know, so people read a story like this online. They have nothing better to do, and they can't wait to make fools of themselves with their uninformed, nasty comments.
But it's not just...
And that's all that is. Let's move on to another topic.
No, because this is a good topic. Because it's not just this particular item. You did a blog where you called yourself an idiot.
Yeah, right.
And I did, and you've been and the Patch has been nice enough through you and their friend to post my columns on their thing. And I did one on Schumer and Gillibrand, and there were like 50 comments, 2 on topic.
Right.
The rest were 2 people fighting with each other through and I'm saying this is ridiculous. And then you call yourself an idiot, and then you got people obviously didn't read your thing because they were calling you an idiot.
I know, right.
And you made and you did a reply blog, and I wish you would talk to the audience about that.
I was obviously being a little tongue-in-cheek, saying that these people think it's their job to call somebody who posts a blog an idiot, and even if you call yourself an idiot, they take umbrage. Like, no, you can't call yourself an idiot. That's what I'm here to do. But the issue is that what I was referring to is somebody, let's say, who's an elected official, and this happened in Croton-on-Hudson recently. Somebody maybe who writes a blog that appears on Patch, and by the way, almost anybody could do that. So nobody's stopping the nasty commenters from writing their own blogs. We're perceived in some way, whether they realize or not, as insiders. They feel like they're on the outside, so they have to go on the offensive and carp and comment and be negative and criticize and discredit you, instead of God, heaven forbid, saying, that actually is a pretty valid point. I agree with you.
But it would be nice if they were going to be on topic with it. They can carp all they want. Right. But they veer off into these tangents that are irrelevant.
Right.
And I'm saying to myself, you guys must have the most pitiful life.
Right.
They must be sitting in their basement in their underwear with their drool, and sipping beers, picking their nose, and saying, "Oh, I can talk to somebody."
Well, you know what it is. It's the technology. Any technology itself is neither good or evil inherently, but the internet has bred this toxic byproduct of weasels. They're weasels.
Yes.
That's what they are. Because you're a weasel if you can't go up to somebody and say to their face what you're posting online, especially if you're not even putting your name on it. Let's move on.
Now we can move on. But I just wanted to say it wasn't just that particular incident.
Right.
This is a general thing. We've talked about it before because it is a bone of contention. Right. Pet peeve. That's the word I'm thinking of. And you can't say it enough. And maybe if we get somebody... The show educates one person into saying, at least let me keep it on topic.
Yeah, but
because you can only do it in baby steps. It's baby steps.
It's like I'm fulminating over here. Maybe you should throw some ice water on me. I don't know, but I think we have to say, Bazzo, that the people we're referring to, are marginal. It's a lunatic fringe of people who do this kind of nonsense, and obviously the great majority of people are civil and decent people, and so. I think,
now,
we can move on.
If we know the timing of this show, it's going to be the show before Super Tuesday. And now, I know you never talk about who you're going to vote for. But the problem is...
Today won't be any different.
But no, in a Republican primary...
Right.
You're allowed to choose a Republican because it's a Republican.
And by the way, what I will tell you is that I'm not registered with any party.
No, but I'm saying, but neither am I.
I'm unaffiliated.
Right, but I'm saying, so we're not voting when it comes to New York. So but the point is, we can actually pick a Republican in a Republican primary, and it doesn't say anything about November. And you've got 3 candidates now going into Super Tuesday, which I believe will be the real deciding on where it's going to go. It looks like Santorum is getting the conservative thing. People are starting to go away from Gingrich.
Right.
Romney has the money, but he still can't get above that 25% of the Republicans, because when you add Gingrich and Santorum together, they still have more support, that conservative base. How have you been watching? Because I talked about this with Darren 2 weeks ago. You were out sick.
Well, I mean, you know I'm a political junkie. So
right. So how have you been seeing this?
How about seeing how? I think what's fascinating to me is how, the Republican Party collectively is totally, the word is fractionated. There's no cohesiveness there, obviously, philosophically or politically. And I think that, what some of the analysis you do read and see says, makes certain sense to me, that what they're basically doing in a certain sense is handing votes over to President Obama.
Yeah, but couldn't you
Because, there is no unification of the party. They're shooting, they're stabbing each other in the back, except they're doing it on TV so you can see it. And what's going to happen, I mean, quite logically, is whoever the nominee is, they're providing all of this commercial material to the Democrats that you're going to be seeing later this year, where one Republican leader, opinion leader with a very large following, is going to be criticizing the nominee.
Okay, now let me say, let's go back to 2008. You had Obama versus...
If Romney's the nominee, the Democrats obviously are going to have commercials showing Newt Gingrich saying how unqualified Mitt Romney is. Rick Santorum saying unqualified. If Santorum's the nominee, it's going to be vice versa.
Yeah, but let's face it. Republicans ran Hillary Clinton 2 o'clock in the morning ad. Comment about Obama, 3 o'clock in the morning about Obama. It didn't hurt Obama.
Right.
I think that these vetting processes are important. But what I think you're watching...
No, and I agree with you that I think actually it's healthy. I think it's more than important. It's healthy. I don't know. I have no idea who's going to be the nominee. Everybody thought at one point it was Romney. Now, I don't know.
Well, Romney's got the super delegates, and like I talked about,
and he has a lot of money.
But he's got the super delegates, and they can, like in 1976 and 1980, on Democrat and Republicans, and the super delegates decided those close calls. So sometimes these state primary the fixes in, and the establishment wants Romney.
And by the way, if he's the nominee, I will tell you, I think he's a credible nominee, and I think he's electable.
Look what happened with Reagan and Bush. Reagan chose Bush to be the vice president to unify the party. You may see a reverse with Romney choosing either probably Santorum and not Gingrich, because I think there's a visceral hatred between those two.
Yeah,
but not be with Santorum. You might see that to unify the party.
Oh, you mean Santorum as VP?
Yes.
Yeah, that could be a very strong ticket. It could be a very strong ticket.
What I'm saying right now is that people should not pay too much attention to the media spin on these primaries, because it's the same thing they said in 68, 72, 76. Oh, they're going to hate that. Nobody's going to come together. No, the primaries are important.
Okay, good point.
And they vet and...
Okay, and we have to wrap it up. So
yes.
But anyhow, it's been fun, Bazzo. I don't think either of us have marks, right? You didn't lay a glove on me.
No, something tells me you're a Romney supporter. You look like you're an establishment guy.
Oh, okay, right.
Anyway.
You'll never know.
Oh, what? I've already said in one of my columns I'd prefer Gingrich.
Oh, okay.
And that's my opinion, and you may beg to differ.
And when Bruce the Blog listens, people talk. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you all next week. You are...